Hello everyone. Today we will going to discuss about the eye movements and their control. Today's specific learning objectives are to know about muscular control of eye, to know about neural pathway for control of eye movement, to know about types of fixation movement of eye, to know about fusion of visual images and to know about strabismus. So first we start with the muscular control of eye movements. So as you can see in this figure, this is the eyeball, and these are all the extraocular muscles, the muscles which are attached with the eyeball from outside. Okay, and their name are lateral rectus, medial rectus, superior rectus, inferior rectus, superior oblique and inferior oblique. All these are extraocular muscle which are supplied by mainly three cranial nerves. The cranial nerve number 3, that is oculomotor nerve, the cranial nerve number 4, that is trochlear nerve, and cranial nerve number 6, that is abducens nerve. Okay. Now all these muscles, they are actually act in a pair. uh, for example, that one pair is made up of the medial rectus and radial rectus. So these two pairs, they are mainly involved with the uh, adduction and abduction respectively. The superior and inferior recti, they helps to cause the movement of eyeball upward and downward, and then superior and inferior oblique, they are also involved in this movements, but simultaneously also with rotational movements, that internal rotation as well as external rotation. Okay. So one type of movement is occur around the vertical axis. Suppose this one is vertical axis, then the movement around is adduction and abduction. Then the horizontal axis, suppose this is horizontal axis, then the movement is uh, upward movement and downward movement. And the antero posterior, suppose you imagine a one axis which pass through the center of the eyeball, then antero posterior axis around which the rotational movement occur, intorsion and extorsion. So these three types of movements, anatomical movements are there, and uh, these muscles, they are mainly controlled by cranial nerves, third, fourth and sixth. Out of this, most of the muscles, they are, as you can see, this is the third cranial nerve nuclei, and these are the branches of third cranial nerve. So medial rectus, superior rectus, inferior rectus and inferior oblique, all these four muscles, they are supplied by third cranial nerve. The superior oblique, it is supplied by fourth cranial nerve, and lateral rectus, it is supplied by sixth cranial nerve. This nerve innervation you will also learn in anatomy also. Okay. So this is about the extraocular muscles, and all this pair of the muscles, they are reciprocally innervated. Reciprocal innervation means when one muscle is active or contracted, at the same time the opposite muscle is going to relax. Suppose there is a requirement of adduction of the eyeball, so at that time the medial rectus will contract and simultaneously the lateral rectus will relax. Whenever there is a requirement for upward movement of the eye, at that time the superior rectus will contract and inferior rectus will relax. So this agonist antagonist type of arrangement is also here present in this extraocular muscles, and the same type of reciprocal innervation you will learn in the motor innervation or motor system of somatic nervous system. So this is all about the muscular control of eye movement, and all these cranial nerve nuclei, they are situated in the brainstem. Now neural pathway for control of eye movement. So in this figure, this is the cerebral hemisphere, and this portion is that of the brainstem. Okay. And as you can see, the our important three cranial nerve nuclei, for third cranial nerve, for fourth cranial nerve and sixth cranial nerve. This you can see in this figure. Apart from this, there is one more nuclei, that is a vestibular nuclei. Okay. The vestibular nuclei, which is mainly nuclei of eighth cranial nerves which receives the fiber from cerebellum, as well as they supply or they are the motor nuclei for eighth cranial nerve. Okay, and also you can observe in this figure that all these four nuclei, they are interconnected. Vestibular nuclei is connected with this third, fourth and sixth cranial nerve nuclei. The west and the one type of bundle is formed by the fibers which make the interconnection between third, fourth and sixth cranial nuclei, as well as with vestibular nuclei, and that bundle is known as medial longitudinal fasciculus. And this medial longitudinal fasciculus is mainly responsible for the movement of eye along with the movement of head. So we can say that our both the eye movement or movement of both the eye, they are mainly depends on a movement of other eye as well as with the movement of head. So that's why whenever we move our head simultaneously, our eyeball will also move to keeps the uh, image of interest on a focus. Okay. So this is possible because of the interconnection between the third, fourth and sixth cranial nerve nuclei as well as with vestibular nuclei, and the bundle which is formed by this interconnected fiber, it is known as medial longitudinal fasciculus. Okay. Now come to this cerebral cortex. Okay. So here we have a mainly two important area as far as movements are concerned. Okay, or we can say the movements of the eyeball is controlled by two type of area. The one area which is present in the frontal lobe, this one, which is known as the voluntary fixation area, and the another area is situated in this parieto-occipital lobe, that is the involuntary fixation area. Okay, and this is present in visual association area. This visual association area is actually a secondary visual area. In a previous lecture in visual cortex, we had discussed that the fiber from the visual pathway, they are mainly end in the primary visual cortex, and some are also end in the secondary visual cortex. So this secondary visual cortex is known as visual association area, and the connection is presence between the primary visual cortex and secondary visual area, or the signals are transmitted from primary visual cortex to secondary visual cortex, and secondary visual cortex is also known as visual association area, which are mainly responsible involuntary fixation movements of the eye. So and from this area the incoming fibers, they are coming to the pretectal nucleus and superior colliculus. So here is the superior colliculus, here is the pretectal nucleus, and this pretectal nuclei, they make the connection with the visceral nuclei of third cranial nerve, that is also known as the Edinger-Westphal nucleus. Okay. So visceral nuclei of third cranial nerve or Edinger-Westphal nucleus, as well as the motor nuclei of third cranial nerve, which is known as oculomotor nucleus, motor nucleus of fourth cranial nerve known as trochlear nucleus, motor nucleus of sixth cranial nerve is known as abducens nucleus. So all these are the interconnected, but this pretectal nuclei, they receive the fiber from the voluntary fixation area as well as from the involuntary fixation area, through the tract which is known as occipitotectal tract. Okay, and the superior colliculus is also receiving this fiber from the occipital lobe via the occipitocollicular tract, which end on the superior colliculi. Now superior colliculi we will discuss later on in detail. It is important in all the involuntary movements or subconscious movements of the eyeball. There are several different subconscious movements of the eyeballs are present, which we will discuss later on, and for that the superior colliculus is or their control is mainly done by the superior colliculus. Now from this two type of area and from their name, it is we can conclude that the eye movement is voluntarily controlled as well as they are involuntarily regulated. So some of the control of the eyeball we can voluntarily adjust. Okay, for example, if we want to move our eyeball with our will, we can move it, but at certain times its movements are involuntary also to keeps the image clear or to keeps the image on the focus. Okay, so at that time the involuntary movements are there, and voluntarily we can also move our eyeball. Most of the time to locate any image in the visual field, we use the voluntary control, and once it is there, it is remain locked with this involuntary fixation. Okay, so the image in the visual field is remain focused because of the involuntary fixation area, and when we want to move our focus from one object to another, so for that movement we use a voluntary fixation area. Okay, that we will just discuss that fixation movements of the eye. The perhaps the most important movements of the eye are those that causes the eyes to fix on a discrete portion of field of vision. It means the most important functions of as far as the movement of the eye is concerned is to fix on a image of our interest. Okay, and particularly on a particular point of field of vision, whatever we are seeing when our eyes are open, whatever area we are able to see, it is known as field of vision. In all this field of vision, certain thing is of our interest, so we want to focus on that object or that image. Okay, so that image of interest or object of interest, it's focused by a movements of the eye, and that is the one of the important function. Okay, the fixation movements are controlled by two neural mechanism that we had just discussed. That the first of this mechanism allows the person to move the eyes voluntarily to find the object on which he or she want to fix the vision, which is called the voluntary fixation mechanism. So in our whatever the field of vision we are able to see, some objects are our of our interest and we want to focus on that. So by doing that function, the area which is used is voluntary fixation area, and that type of function is known as the voluntary fixation mechanism. The second is an involuntary mechanism called the involuntary fixation mechanism that holds the eye firmly on the object once it has been found. So once we found our object of interest, when we want to focus or want to keep our focus on that object, so that continuous focus is maintained with the help of involuntary fixation area. So that our interest of image or interest of object is remains in the focus with the help of involuntary fixation mechanism. So if our voluntary fixation mechanism is damaged, then it is difficult to locate object of interest, and if involuntary is damaged, then it will want to difficult to unlock the image. Okay, so that you can see here, that first we see the voluntary fixation movement. The voluntary fixation movements are controlled by a cortical field located bilaterally in premotor cortical region of frontal lobe. Now this premotor area where mainly the planning of all the voluntary movements occur, not only of the extraocular muscle or muscles of the eye, but all other muscles of our body. Their planning for voluntary action is mainly occur in this premotor cortical region. So this voluntary fixation area is also present in this premotor cortical region of frontal lobe. Bilateral destruction or dysfunction of this area makes it difficult for a person to unlock the eye from the one point of fixation and move them to another point. So we cannot unlock the eye. It means we cannot move voluntarily from one focus to another focus. Okay, if this area is damaged, the person cannot move the eye voluntarily from one object to another object. Okay, it means it is difficult to unlock the eye. Once the eye is locked on a object of interest, it is difficult to unlock the eye, and to move the eye, the person either has to cover his or her eye for some times, or keeps his or her eyelid closed, okay, for some time. Then and then he or she can unlock the eye and focus on another object if this area is damaged. These are the difficulties which a person has to face if voluntary fixation area is damaged. He or she has a difficulty to unlock the eye. And in this image you can see the voluntary movement of eye. Okay, just focus on the movement of the eye, that these are the range of movement which can be done by the voluntary movement area. Okay, we can person can move the eye laterally, medially, and even rotate the eye. Okay, so this is the importance of voluntary movement of eye, which is done by voluntary fixation area. Now the involuntary fixation movement. The fixation mechanism that causes the eye to lock on the object of attention once it is found is controlled by secondary visual area in occipital cortex, located mainly anterior to the primary visual cortex. So this thing we had seen in that previous figure, that in occipital lobe in front of the primary visual area there is a secondary visual area or visual association area, which mainly helps to lock the our fixation or lock the image of interest. Okay, and when this fixation area is destroyed bilaterally in the animal has difficulty keeping its eye directed towards a given fixation point, or may become totally unable to do so. So if the involuntary fixation area is damaged, the person cannot keeps it focus on any one thing. Okay, the focus is continuously wandering. Okay, the person cannot fix the image, or cannot keep the image of interest on a focus. Okay, so the eyeballs, they are continuously wandering if this involuntary fixation area is damaged. Now mechanism of involuntary locking or fixation, in that there will be a role of superior collicular. So the eyes normally have three type of continuous but almost imperceptible movements. Imperceptible means subconscious movements, that we are not aware about these movements. Okay, so not only the movements which we had discussed along with the extraocular muscle, apart from that movement, the eyeball has to undergo several imperceptible movements continuously. Okay, so what are these imperceptible or subconscious movements? The first is continuous tremor at a rate of 30 to 80 cycle per second, caused by successive contraction of the motor unit in ocular muscles. So the muscle themselves, they causes the continuous tremor like movement at the rate of 30 to 80 cycle per second. Okay. So that is one of the imperceptible or subconscious movements. Second, a slow drift of eyeball in one direction or another. So when the image is focus on the fovea, okay, at that time the focus is continuously drifting, but slowly the focus is moving away from the center of the fovea, and that type of movement is slow drifting movement. Then there will be a sudden flicking movements that are controlled by the involuntary fixation mechanism. When as we discussed in this slow drift movement, that the focus, they are slowly moving. Because of this continuous tremor, the image are slowly moving from the center of the fovea towards the edge of the fovea, and when they reach at the edge of the fovea, they suddenly come back to the center by this involuntary fixation mechanism, and that movement is known as the flicking movement. So slow drift movements, they are dragging the image away from the center of the fovea slowly, and when they reach at the edge of the fovea, it means when they are just about to move out of the fovea centralis, at that time the sudden flicking movement they drag them back to the center of the fovea. So, in that way it keeps this image on a focus, okay, and it try to maintain the acuity of vision. And this in this things you can see that this one point of image, they are continuously moving towards the edge. This is the fovea centralis. You can see that this round is fovea central, fovea, and the center point is fovea centralis. The image which is shown by this dotted line, they suggesting the slow drift movement which moves the focus from away from the center to the periphery, and all the solid line, they are a flicking movement which drag the image toward the center. If you see the arrow, then all the dotted line arrow is going away from the center, and the solid line arrow, they dragging the image back towards the center, okay, or they try to keep the image on the center of the fovea centralis, and short drifting movement, they are dragging this away from the center of fovea centralis. Okay. So, this is about the slow drifting and flicking movement and continuous tremor. These are the some imperceptible movements of the eyeball. Now, the saccadic movements of the eye, the mechanism of successive fixation point. When a visual scene is moving continuously before the eye, such as when a person is riding in the car, the eye fix on one highlight after the another in the visual field, jumping from the one to the next at a rate of 2 to 3 jumps per second. The jumps are called saccades and the movements are called optokinetic movements. So, when the person is riding in a car and seeing the outside things, okay, so whatever the things they are passing in front of that person's eye, they are actually jumping on the visual field, that the one image remain for a certain duration of time, then that image goes out from the visual field and another image come. So, the person's eye is jumping from one image to another, and this type of movements is known as the saccades, and that is also known as the optokinetic movements. The another example of saccadic movements is during reading. When you are reading, suppose when you are reading right now this line, and at that time if you observe your eye movement, so when this line is completed and when you start the next line, so during this your eyeball is moving, jump from this point to this point, okay. When you start a new line during the reading, your eye is jumping from one point to another, and this is also one of the example of saccadic movements during the reading. Another movement is fixation on moving object, that is known as the pursue movement. The eye can also remain fixed on the moving object, which is called a pursue movement. Now, our eye having the ability to focus on the moving object also. Suppose you are focusing on any object which are moving. So, initially you have a require few seconds or few minutes to locate that object which are already in the motion, okay. But once you fix your gaze on that moving object, your eyeball can follow that object. For example, suppose the tennis match is going on and you are just coming in between that tennis match, and first you want to you are sitting in the audience and you want to focus on a tennis ball, okay. So, at that time initially you have a difficulty to or require a few second or minute to locate a ball, but once you locate a ball, your eye is moving along with that movement of the ball, tennis ball, okay. So, that type of movements when you are following that tennis ball, that is known as the smooth pursue movement. Okay, so that is another type of movements which is mainly controlled by this fixation area. Okay, so that is a one more ability of a eye. Okay, so fixation on a moving object, that is known as the pursuit movement. Now the role of superior collicular. Superior collicular are mainly responsible for turning the eye and head towards the visual disturbance. Now this superior colliculus, though it is a very small area, but it has one of the highest blood supply per gram of tissue, okay, compared to other brain area. This area is area which is more active because it having a one of the highest blood flow per gram of tissue per minute. Okay, because it is very active area, and though it is small, it having a topographical representation same as that of the sensory or motor cortex. It means different body part, they are topographically represented in the superior collicular. Not only this, the different uh, part of the retina, they are also topographically represented in superior collicular. And if you remember the visual pathway, the some of the accessory fibers or accessory visual pathway, they are also going from the optic tract into this superior colliculus. So superior colliculus receives signal from the eye, they are receiving the signal from the higher center, means from the cerebral cortex, from this posterior secondary visual association area or secondary visual area from occipito collicular tract. They receive the signal from the auditory area, they receive the signal from this vestibular nuclei, and also receive the signal from cerebellum. So all these things, they combinedly makes the superior collicular very much important to cause the movement of the eye along with the movement of the head, and by that it try to keeps the focus or try to keep the image clear when we move our head. Otherwise, if the superior collicular is damaged, the persons lose the balance, okay, because they are not able to keep the image clear when the eyeball are moving or when the head are moving. Okay, because whenever the head moves simultaneously, there will be the movement of the eyeball, and at that time it is important to keep the uh, image of interest on focus, then and then we can maintain the balance, because all this superior colliculi, all this third, fourth and sixth cranial nerve nuclei, they are in connection with the vestibular nuclei, and all this they combinedly control our movement of the head and the movement of the eye, and in that way it maintain the image clear as well as they maintain the balance. And because of this topographical representation and functions of superior collicular, sometimes when the only the primary visual cortex is damaged, the person is blind because he is not able to interpret the signal by the primary visual cortex, but that person, they can move their head whenever any visual disturbance is there in the lateral visual field. Okay, so that person can move his head towards the visual disturbance, even we consider that person as a blind because of the damage to the primary visual cortex, because the primary visual cortex is damaged, but the if the retina is normal and the signal which is coming from optic tract into superior colliculus, they send the signal back to the third, fourth and sixth cranial nerve, and in that way they can move the eyeball simultaneously. Because of the connection with the vestibular nuclei, they can also move the head also. Okay, so this type of functions are executed by superior colliculus. Okay. Now the whatever the movements we have discussed, they are combinedly known as, sometimes considered as a physiological movements of the eye. The earlier movements of by the extraocular muscles, which are actually we perform voluntarily. They are known as the anatomical movements, like adduction, abduction, upward movement, downward movements, and rotational movements. All this which you are already learn, or you will going to learn in the anatomy, they are the anatomical movements which are executed by voluntary control of extraocular muscles. The subconscious movements which are performed, though they are performed with the, of course, with the help of extraocular muscles, but they are a subconscious movements. Their movements are known as physiological movements of eye, which we had just discussed. The one is the saccadic movements, which we had discussed, that the movements of the eye when the person is riding in the car and looking from the window to outside and focusing on the outside object. So that is saccadic movements. The movements during the reading from one line to another, that is also example of saccadic movements. Smooth pursuit movements, when a person focus on a moving object, so to follow the moving object is mainly because of the smooth pursuit movement. Vestibular movements is the movements of the eyeball along with the movements of the head, that is the vestibular movements. And convergence movements, this movements is mainly occur at the time of accommodation, that to see the or to shift the focus from far object to near object. So at the time of focusing of the near object during the accommodation, there will be a convergence of the eyeball, okay, simultaneously. So that convergence movements is also one of the subconscious movements which come under the physiological movements of the eye. So broadly, these four types of movements which occur subconsciously, it is known as the physiological movements of eye. Now the fusion of visual images from the two eye. Now in the earlier lecture also we had discussed that our two eye are separated at the distance, or located at the distance of 2 inches. It means the two eye are separated from each other with the distance of 2 inches. So sometimes the images which are, or light rays which are coming from an object, they are focusing on the different point of the retina. Sometimes they are focus on the corresponding points, but when we focus on the near object, they are not on the corresponding points. And generally it is seen that the right eye, they focus more of the right visual field, and left eye they focus more of the left visual field. But overall we see the world with the binocular vision, and all the images are clear to us, and this is mainly possible because of the fusion of the image in the visual cortex, okay. And this fusion is occurs because of the mechanism which we will going to discuss right now. And we had also know from the visual pathway that the first, the lateral geniculate body, it receives the fiber from both the eye, ipsilateral eye as well as the contralateral eye, and they are terminated in the specific layer of lateral geniculate nuclei. And from lateral geniculate nuclei, the fibers which from the optic radiation and terminated in the visual cortex. In the visual cortex, they are also terminated in the parallel neurons, the neurons which are located parallel to each other. There are different columns in the visual cortex. In this different columns, the fiber which are coming from ipsilateral and contralateral eye, they are going to terminated on the parallel neurons, okay. So there will be a interaction. The interaction occurs between parallel cortical neurons to cause a interference excitation in the specific neurons when the two visual image are not in register, that is, are not precisely fused. So suppose the visual image, they are not on the corresponding point on the retina, it means they are not falling on the corresponding point on the retina. At that time, the signals which is coming up to the visual cortex, that causes the interference excitation of a specific neurons, okay. And it tells the this neurons that the images, they are not in register, it means they are not on the corresponding point. There must be some changes in the or there must be some movements of the eyeball, so that the two focuses, they are coming on the corresponding point. So ultimately, these signals, they inform the visual cortex, particularly this interference neurons. They inform these interference neurons that the visual image, they are not in register and they needs to be fused. It means right now they are not precisely fused, so some changes is need to be done. Okay, this excitation presumably provide the signal that is transmitted to the oculomotor apparatus to cause convergence or divergence or rotation of the eye, so that the fusion can be re-established. So because the images, they are not on a corresponding points, they are not properly fused in the visual cortex, so some feedback signal they are sending from the occipital cortex back to the oculomotor apparatus. Okay, it means this cranial nerve nuclei which are situated in the brainstem, and they tell that whether the convergence is needed or divergence is needed, or some rotational movements of the eye is needed to make the image on the corresponding, or to fold the image on the corresponding point of the retina. Okay. Once the corresponding point of the two retina are in register, the excitation of the specific interference neuron in the visual cortex disappear. So earlier whatever the interference neuron is excited, when the image they are or when the corresponding points, or when the images fall on the corresponding points and they are in come in complete registered in the visual cortex, or properly registered in the visual cortex, and they are properly fused, at that time this interference neuron, they are once again means their excitation is stop. Okay, and that is it, this interference neurons they is not remain continuously excited once the image they are properly fused. Okay. So this is the mechanism of fusion of visual image, that whenever the image is not properly fused, at that time the interference neuron they become excited, they send the signal to the oculomotor apparatus in the brainstem, which cause the necessary movements of both the eyeballs, whether the convergence or divergence, and at that time in by that way they makes the image to fall on the corresponding point of the retina. That signals is again reach up to the visual cortex to tell the interference neurons that now the images are properly fused, and that's why the excitation of interference neurons they are stopped. Okay. So this is the mechanism of fusion of visual image from the two eye, and when this fusion mechanism is not proper, or any difficulty or any damage to any pathways or visual cortex or anything, then it leads to strabismus or squint, that is a lack of fusion of eye. Okay. And there are three type of strabismus: horizontal strabismus, torsional strabismus and vertical strabismus. So here this is a horizontal strabismus, that in the one eye is in proper focus, the another eye is either more adduction or more abduction is there, that is the horizontal strabismus. The torsional strabismus is showing the means here the rotational movements they are not proper. Okay. So that leads to torsional strabismus, and when superior or inferior movements they are not in registered, or they are not very much coordinated, at that time vertical strabismus occur or squint. Okay. This type of strabismus they sometimes leads to diplopia. Okay. And diplopia means double vision, the person is suffering from double vision, and if only defect is on in the one eye, then sometimes the persons they only use the one eye to see, or the image which is focused on the retina of a normal eye, that is only going to register in the visual cortex, while the visual cortex itself they stop to interpret the image from the affected eye. Okay, the eye which caused the diplopia, that defective eye, the signal from the defective eye is stopped to transmit it to the visual cortex, and when the visual cortex is not interpreting the image from the affected eye for some times, that neurons they are not remain working. Okay, the brain loses that neuron, and that's why the person, if even if we corrected this any squint or strabismus in the affected eye, even after that the person is not able to see through this eye, because the neurons are already damaged, okay, or already stopped to interpret, and that type of blindness in that particular eye is blindness means amblyopia, and this type of blindness is known as amblyopia x anopsia. Okay, so that is because of a unuse of the affected eye for a longer duration of time leads to amblyopia x anopsia. Okay, so this is about the strabismus and squint. So with this we will completed the movements of the eye. Thank you.